You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 29, The Devourer of All Things. Part 1.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Marina Kravchuk.
And I am Charlene Schmidt. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each of them special, and see if there's any morals, meanings, or messages that we've learned.
This week, we take a look at The Devourer of All Things Part 1. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you have not seen this episode yet, you may want to put us on pause, watch the episode, and then come back to hear us talk all about it.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so be sure to engage the like and share buttons on YouTube. Subscribe to us, please, on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel so you don't miss a new release, which is every Tuesday, by the way. And if you listen to the audio-only version, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast, because that really helps us out. You can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy, and that way you keep up with all of our latest news and updates there.
Before we jump into the recap, let's talk about cadet voicemails for the next couple of weeks. We'll put the call out for the cadets' thoughts on Part 1 of the Devourer of All Things Part 1 last week, but we're walking that back. Instead, we're going to do what we did at the start of the season, and we would like to hear what you thought about both parts in one voicemail. If you already know the drill and want to send your thoughts in early, that's great. Please do so. missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. That's the email. And please tell us the following. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? Otherwise, the deadline for messages about Devourer of All Things, both parts, is August 31st.
Yes, and we're doing this for a couple of reasons. And the first of which is that our producer Earl recently reminded me that this is about the time that cadets are going back to school, starting that whole routine again, and it's a busy time for both kids and parents alike. And we thought because two-parters are a little hard to split up in terms of telling the overall story, it makes sense to consolidate the voice messages down to both parts for one message. And the back half of season 2 also has a lot of two-parters. And so It just kind of makes sense to do this. We started off the season this way. We're going to keep going with that. And if you've been participating and joining us, we hope you'll continue to do so. But if you haven't participated yet and you'd like to, we would love to hear from you. And we have some exciting stuff planned for the future. So stay tuned for that news when it happens.
Yep. With all that said, let's kick things off for this show by answering the questions we usually ask of our cadets. So, Shar, did you like this episode?
Yes, absolutely. I loved seeing Wesley Crusher again, especially in that sweater. He's the reveal of our mysterious entity at last. It just warms my heart so much because it's so obvious in Will Wheaton's voice that he's having the time of his life doing this, playing this character in this way. His enthusiasm is infectious. Love it, love it, love it. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. What a fantastic twist. I was racking my brain about which possible super being might be behind the unknown benefactor. Remember, we actually had the discussion about it. Like,
We sure did.
Could it be Q? Yeah, unlikely. Perhaps it's some newfangled alien. I mean, we're in Delta Quadrant. It's a big
Right.
quadrant.
We don't know.
And of course, we're dealing with time travel. So why not have a time traveler, a traveler, capital T? What's more, it's the original Prodigy. It's Wesley Crusher. So it's just one of those where, my heart just, ballooned. It was a tremendous reading.
Oh,
I loved it.
the first Prodigy. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Well done.
So do you have a favorite part? I mean, it's kind of hard to pick. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot of excitement. I had to go with Rock Talk nerding out over Wesley. Of course she knows who he is. Because science. And this is my favorite part because Wesley Crusher on TNG and thus Will Wheaton got a lot of flack for being the boy genius character who did save the ship maybe a few too many times. Yeah, it was probably a bit excessive, but That said, you know what? Over the years, it's been really nice to see the tide turning
Yeah.
as both Will and Wesley have become a little more beloved in the fandom, and then as opposed to, say, Next Gen's airing. And this little moment from Rock Talk, it feels like a really long overdue payoff within the show itself for Will loving the franchise and this character, even when the audience didn't love him back.
I have
How
to
about
say
you?
that I love, I mean, the reveal was a fantastic moment. I love generally the whole presentation, like that entire portion of the episode when we see what he looks like. We kind of get a glimpse at what, possibly maybe a little glimpse of what his existence, his sphere of existence looks like. The way he is, with the experience and knowledge, is so beyond comprehension of, your average humanoid. So the way, he gets that moment when he introduces himself to the crew and thus to all the new fans, and even though we do see him very briefly in season 2 of Picard, just that last moment,
Right.
the moment at the end, but we kind of get a much better update now of what he's been up to since TNG. Basically, he is a time travel after all. So again, there's so much going on for him on so many levels. There are multiple timelines and multiple galaxies. He, in that little moment of time when he's like, "Hi, I'm Wesley Crusher," he does comes off completely unhinged, very manic, frenetic. So it's
Crazy.
no
Yeah.
wonder that, yeah, that our crew kind of goes, "This is a lot. In fact, this is too much. Are we sure we can actually trust him?" And of course, my other absolute favorite moment is when you have the classic Janeway, yeah, when she's pushing back at Jellicoe and she just goes into her mama bear mode, where, she's going to
Yeah.
protect those kids and nothing is going to stand in her way. So those two probably the two moments that really stand out for me.
How can you not
Let's
love Mama Bear Janeway?
yeah, no, he was just like, the curling fist and, oh,
Oh
yeah.
gosh.
I
Yeah,
mean,
we've got to talk about
yeah, so small wonder that Jellicoe was basically stuttering. Like you cannot go
that.
against that.
He actually did. Yeah.
So what do we learn?
I think the biggest thing and the coolest thing is to not overlook the power of thought. Now, we mere humans might not have the capacity to move objects with our minds and use them to transport through time and space like Wesley, but you know what? He is still right. The power of our thoughts shape everything that we believe and what we do. And you know what? In our day to day lives, we might overlook that, but that shapes everything.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
there's a lot of gravitas to that one little
Yeah.
line he said, in my opinion. How
Yeah,
about you?
well, the usual thing that kind of ties into, the running thread of being part of, the crew, part of the team. You don't give up and leave your friends slash crew members behind. And we get it on different levels, on different scales. I mean, we have Gwyn, that moment when she's running behind Wesley to grab those extra time stabilizers. She's like, I can't leave my friends. They're time monsters. So, they
Yeah.
know how much the crew care for each other at this point. Then you have Janeway, who, yeah, she's talking to a random alien of the week, way back when in Voyager, or she's pushing back at Starfleet itself, whichever higher ranking admiral, she's willing to go against the orders in order to save, this little group of cadet hopefuls. They're not even officers, they're still her crew. And then, of course, you have Wesley, who's literally trying to save an entire timeline. We're talking unimaginable magnitude. And then, of course, another lesson here is that, trying to make the best choices based on information that you have at hand. And again, we have it with different characters here. When she hears that the Luma coming after her because she's a time aberration for all intents and purposes, she's part of the paradox.
Yeah.
And Wesley's like, no, 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 that's you don't realize this is so much bigger than you are. Wesley going into a whole lot of trouble to explore all this. Like it's almost like I don't know, thinking Doctor Strange maybe, like or Time Lord, like being aware of
Oh, yeah.
all
I've
these
got
various
words on that later
timelines.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course Janeway making the decisions where she's following into unknown. And as we know, we arrive at that pretty troubling cliffhanger at the end where it's like we know Wesley might be able to do something. Can Janeway, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes. Oh, dear. So much to look forward to. Well, thank you, Marina, for your answers to those questions. And it's time now for the episode recap. This is The Devourer of All Things, Part 1, written by Jennifer Amiro and directed by Sung Shin. It's been a long road, but our crew has finally reached the coordinates of their destination, only to find an asteroid field? That's disappointing. But Rock detects that these asteroids are orbiting a strange attractor, and Gwyn hypothesizes that the planet is out of phase like she is. Rock texts the tech, and lo, a whole planet appears. They land the Infinity in a structure that looks like it came from both the past and the future. It's where they detect one life sign. Chakotay? As the crew walks around, the general consensus is that this place is creepy, complete with talking statues. Just as they're questioning their sanity because they're chasing after a man lost in time, Murph directs everyone to the big door of a vault of some sort. And out comes not Chakotay, but Wesley Crusher, who's been waiting for them. Meanwhile, the Infinity's warp trail has led Voyager to an abandoned Borg transwarp conduit. They're catching up to their missing crew members and are also piecing together what happened during the strange time manipulation that occurred before holographic Gwyn went offline. If time predators are going after members of her crew, she wants to hunt them down first. But first, Admiral Jellicoe would like a word. Why is Voyager not returning to Earth as ordered? Janeway briefly explains, but she is under strict orders. She wants to launch an investigation into her missing crew members. She'll have to file a formal request with Starfleet rather than zipping off and finding them herself. Janeway's having none of it. She has only 3 rules when captaining a starship, and one of them is to never abandon a member of her crew. She feigns loss of signal and cuts off the communication before he can retort, explaining that they're going through a transwarp tunnel. It's not a complete lie because Voyager does just that. Back on the hidden planet, Wesley apologizes for his lack of social niceties. He formally introduces himself and offers his sweaters to the crew if they're feeling a draft. Risking rudeness himself, Dal cuts right to the chase and asks, "Where is Chakotay and where is their ship?" "They are not here," Wesley answers, "but the crew is exactly where they need to be right now." He knows this because he is a traveler, a time guardian angel who watches over the cosmos, and he is the one who has been reaching out to them. Wesley explains that they are living in an impossible time where a paradox has poked a hole in the cosmic tapestry, like the protostar not arriving on Tars Lamora, which means Gwyn shouldn't exist, but does. Therefore, this universe is existing in 2 states at once, and that's causing it to unravel. It opens holes for cosmic scavengers who eat dying timelines. Travelers maintain the fragile balance between universes, and while most travelers have a hands-off approach to this task, right now, Wesley does not. He wants to fight for the universe he and his mom call home, whereas the other travelers have deemed the problem too difficult to fix. Wesley disagrees with them. He has researched infinite universes to find the one scenario where the prime universe survives this situation without endless suffering, and to make that happen, well, he isn't sure yet, but he does have a plan. What he does know is that our crew must stay together. Time freezes for everyone except Wes and Gwyn. It's the work of the Loom, the cosmic scavengers Wes told them about. They've slowed down time so they can feed. Wes takes Gwyn's hand and they run. He has time stabilizers they can use, but they need to get to them first. This was why Wesley didn't contact the crew directly. Their mere presence acted like a beacon, luring the Loom to them. He was trying to be discreet, but that's a moot point now. Wesley opens a portal to someplace, somewhere, with his thoughts, and retrieves the time stabilizers just as the Loom appears. With Gwyn's help, Wes manipulates mind over matter in several ways as they make their escape, returning to the rest of the crew and unfreezing them in time thanks to the time stabilizers. It isn't long before the Loom catch up to them, though, and phasers don't really phase them. Wes orders everyone to put their hands on a door, which is a portal to a mid-20th century office that is safe for now. Meanwhile, Voyager has exited the transwarp conduit and detected the hidden planet. Janeway orders an away team to beam down, investigate where the Illum await. And that is where we will leave off until next week, where we'll dive into part 2 of the Devourer of All Things.
Again, somehow it's only a 22.5-minute episode, something like that, and yet it's massive. It's spectacular from the point of view of how carefully the story is crafted. We're talking about a colossal amount of exposition is going on. So, as we anticipated, this is the start of this sudden mad rush into things are happening. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
It really is. There is a ton of action. There is a lot of things in the storylines to keep track of. And now we're going into, I would say, even higher concepts
Mhm.
than we did in season one, thinking about time amok and just how everybody was in a different time frame that went at different speeds. This is a
Yeah. Mhm.
this is that by a factor of 10. And of course I had to think about Dr. Erin when we saw that visual of the
Yeah.
timelines. I'm sure she had a lot to
Mhm.
do with that one little image for all the few seconds on screen, and
Yeah.
how many hours and teamwork that must have taken for everybody to put that together. And I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you, because that simplifies it so
Yeah.
nicely.
No, just generally the explanation I thought was great because we have the introduction, reintroduction, if you think about it, for the people who haven't been up to date on what Wesley's up to if they haven't seen Picard. So
Right.
there's a lot of going on, the whole thing explanation. I thought it was great because it was like, yes, universe is stuck in these two states, and because of that, no go. So, we'll talk about it. I mean, I love the fact that, he was using both a lot of terminology at the same time, like it's like your favorite sweater.
Oh,
We start sort of back into a familiar thing where one of the characters does something or records a log where we get a bit of a refresher. In this case, it's Gwyn. So, we get a nice reintroduction to where the main storyline thread is. They need to find
yeah.
Chakotay, they need to find Protostar, send it back into the past and fix the time, and ergo, save Gwyn. But, at the same time, she's very pensive. That little time stabilizer that the doctor gave her, it's the only thing that's standing between her and the oblivion. So that's pretty heavy. I mean, we're talking, these are teenagers and, life and death situation all the time.
Yeah.
So, when she says, this is a journey that left none of us unchanged, and it is. At this point in time, we're midway through season 2, just how much all of them progressed, this arc from the very beginning of season 1 when they just find the ship. This is an
Yeah.
extraordinary journey.
It really is. Yeah, starting on Tars Lamora
Hmm.
to now, wow,
Yeah.
they've been through so much. I love that they're doing the personal logs and alternating
Hmm.
between members of our crew. Also, I
Yeah.
can't help but appreciate a couple of these callbacks, because the writers know that we're going to spot these. One is, of course, it's been a long road. I refuse to sing it. I won't do
Yeah.
that. I won't torture you all with that. But in my mind, it's like dot, 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 getting from there to here, because Enterprise theme song, in case you haven't watched that show yet.
Yes.
But then also, I'm sure you also spotted the whole
Yeah.
callback to Harry's. Maybe it's not about maybe it's not the destination that matters. It's the journey from
Yes.
Voyager's Endgame, but in
Yeah.
reverse.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was just such a great way of, like, it's all very meta. I love the fact that Prodigy picks up all these little pieces and incorporates organically in its own story.
Oh, yeah.
We get Rock again, doing all the, it's science.
Science.
So, so even though it's Gwyn, interesting enough, who has the prompt, she's like, what if, it's out of phase like I am, the planet, the hidden planet with that pyramid
Yeah.
ziggurat thing. But it's Rock, and what's more, just kind of a little bit earlier than that, when Dal is being Dal, and you can feel it that he must have said about 50 times, "Are we there yet?" Rock is being says, like, "I'll tell you when we get there." No, Rock is brilliant as always, and she's also the one who, when they get inside that ziggurat, goes, "Is anybody else getting a creepy feeling?" And then, of course, Zero, who's still obviously exploring how their new body works, goes, "Oh, is that why the little hair is standing up on the back?" I love it. And it's just so
Yes.
perfect. It has the same vibe as you get in Generations when Data has the emotion chip on, and he's
Yes.
in 10 forward, and Guinan is pouring it's green, some kind of a green horrible concoction, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is revolting.
I
More,
hate this.
please, please. And it's that kind of like, it's a new sensation, it's a new feeling. They're both exploring this because they never had an opportunity. So, and I thought that was a great, like, little rhyme there.
Nice little tie back. Yeah, I didn't think
Yeah,
about Generations, but that's
yeah.
so good. I was mostly
Speaking,
just thinking like, oh, he has little hairs on the back of his neck, because we
yeah,
don't see,
yeah. I
like,
mean,
he
we
doesn't have a
can't.
head of
You,
hair at the top of his
exactly,
head.
exactly.
So, oh, he has
But I
hair.
mean,
That's interesting.
presumably, I would guess, the planet that it kind of fosters the physical embodiments, probably creates the humanoid bodies properly with, with the actual, little hair that you don't necessarily see on the screen.
Right.
Speaking of that, creepy pyramid, and I watched it first. I didn't notice it, but I noticed it just now as I was preparing for the recording of this episode. When they're passing by me, they're hearing all these voices. We see one of the statues, and it looks. I'm almost positive that it is the traveler, or at least a similar person from the same species as the traveler from TNG, as portrayed by Eric Minyuk. And it wasn't.
Yes.
When I first thought that it was actually doing the statue had its hands like this, and then the hair kind of set it off. I'm like, it looks like the traveler. And then it's
Yes.
this three-finger arm. It's not the live long and prosper. It's the actual, his very unusual looking hand. So
Yeah.
I thought that was it. Just all the little things just keep piling up.
Teeny little callback. Well, guess what? I've got more info on that. It is the traveler, and it is
Oh,
not
good.
just the traveler's likeness. That is Eric Minyuk's voice. I talked
Oh,
with Aaron Walke about this some
yeah.
time ago, shortly after the season dropped, and he told me that it was a little bit of a journey to get Eric back to voice this character because
Yeah.
he had retired from acting and was concerned that he would not be able to replicate the voice in the same way. And somehow, I don't know the details of how persistence paid off, but it did, and they got him
Yeah.
back.
That is amazing. See, I was absolutely certain that if they're using it, it is probably from TNG, but it's maybe from one of the episodes that I didn't necessarily. Well, I'm very afraid to guess because I thought it was like it's just So finding out that that's actually recorded from scratch, that's brilliant. That's sort of like hearing Dr. Crusher in the season one. It's like, oh, brand new. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like likenesses, Wesley himself, I think this is a spectacular likeness to Will. It's perfect. And the orange sweater, that's the same sweater that he's wearing in the episode where we get introduced to the Traveler, where the Traveler meets Wesley, or Wesley meets Traveler, rather, for the very first time, which is where no one has gone before from TNG. And, huge shout out again to Aaron, and huge shout out to York Hillebrand on Twitter, because all these little bits and pieces get revealed and confirmed live.
Yes.
It's delightful that we can actually get the confirmation in this fashion. And I don't know, did you actually notice? Because my first one was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I've seen that somewhere, and then I was like, of course.
Oh,
Same
the
sweater.
sweater, I noticed that immediately. And I love how they lean into how
Sweater.
basically Wesley's sweaters have been memed on Star Trek internet for
Yeah.
a long time now. I am not one bit mad about this. All of his comments about sweaters, like relating time holes to sweaters unraveling, and the fact that he has many sweaters because he did. Just, I loved every bit about that. Just, it's like a certain level of self-awareness goes a long
Yeah.
way.
I love it. I like the fact that, I mean, we haven't seen Wesley in a while, within universe, outside of Star Trek universe. But Wesley obviously has advanced so much that he actually is no longer seemingly able to experience linear time. I mean, he's probably jumped around all over the timelines in the different universes for so long. So he
No
has so
doubt.
much information that he's just unable to put it in a structured, calm manner that could explain it from A to B. He keeps jumping from
Yeah.
one point to another, and also what to say and what not to say out loud. It's almost like he's turning around. He's like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Please follow me," because it's all part of his thoughts. Like he's probably thinking it, but it's not coming out.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I love the fact that we get another quip from Gencom about that. He's like, no, this guy's one nebula short of a galaxy. So I can totally see why they would be very, very suspicious of him. I mean, we know we can trust Wesley, but I can totally see how Dell would be like, why are we doing this? We need to be searching for Chakotay. I want to see Protostar again.
Right. On its face, this guy seems crazy. He's
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
disorganized. He really seems to have lost his social niceties for a little
Hmm.
while, but who has time to do that when you're managing a whole universe of timelines? I mean, yeah, apparently living in a linear time is something he is getting back to being used to.
Hmm.
And it's just so much going on inside his head that everything is completely out of order. And so he's retrieving little bits from all over the
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
coming across as just totally crazy.
When he has that amazing graphic that you already mentioned, explaining about the whole idea that there are multiple timelines, how that time all works together. I love the fact that we have the mentions of the different time travel events or planes of existence that we have explored in other Star Trek productions.
Yeah.
So he mentions, okay, there's the Prime universe, then there is the Mirror universe, then there is the Narada incursion, that's the Kelvin timeline, the Kelvin
Yeah.
movies. Then there's the fluidic space from Voyager, mycelial plane. That's from Discovery. And
We don't talk
immediately,
about that.
this was brilliant. I laughed out loud, and I had to watch it multiple times because that is just whoever came up with this. He's like,
So
oh,
good.
you're not supposed to know about this. Forget I said anything.
Yeah.
That was perfect. As we know, I mean, the whole idea about the mycelial plane and subsequently to travel that the Discovery, the ship, was able to do is, of course, highly, highly classified by 23rd century.
Right?
Nobody's
We don't
supposed to
talk
know
about
about it.
that.
Yeah, that was just that was great. I loved it. But it kind of ties into the whole thing where stuff just comes out. He's like, oh, I was not supposed to say that out loud. It's like he's
Yeah.
not used to communicating directly to regular humanoids anymore, which in
Yeah.
the way very sad that implies he doesn't really have, he's just by himself doing this incredibly difficult job, not much of a social company anymore.
Yes. I've got some thoughts
So
on that for the
uh,
discussion.
uh-huh.
So I guess we'll maybe put a pin in that one for a little bit later.
Yes, for sure.
Most of my other observations here are fairly small points. Things like how since the planet is out of phase, it makes sense that it disappeared from star charts. And that was mentioned a few episodes ago. There's like a little bit of a clue
Yeah.
that this sort of
Uh-huh.
thing would happen. I really
Yeah.
liked that. That was a good
Yeah,
detail.
I love that we have the repeat of this. Something that happens out of phase happens fairly frequently across Star Trek, whether it's a
Yeah,
person
it's
that's
not
out of
uncommon.
phase, some kind of yeah. So I love the fact that it's a continuation of the concept that's explored here as well. Another thing that pops up, and that is I thought it may be, and then this was confirmed actually by York, who pulled up the images from the Assignment Earth episode
Hmm.
to compare it to the shots from Prodigy. So the apartment, the mid 20th century apartment where they end up with Wesley, is actually Gary Seven's apartment. It's almost
Yes.
identical. The bookcases, even the lamps, everything. Again, confirmed on Twitter. So it's a delight that we get all this little Easter eggs basically.
So good. Yeah.
So Voyager A, we get a nice portion that with the Janeway's having her discussion with Jellicoe. Again, we had something similar in the beginning when the adult crew is doing their thing, they being the responsible Starfleet officers working out the thing. Here we have it again. They're figuring out the puzzle of where the crew went, why they went there, what they found there. And again, we get, thanks to the Dr. Gnome and the doctor, we get the confirmation that something is indeed following our kids. Specifically, it's some kind of entity that obviously manipulating time, and it's hunting crew members, Gwyn, that seems to be stuck in time. And I love the fact that Janeway says, like, okay, great, like I needed another thing to hate time travel more. And, she knows what she's talking about.
She really doesn't
Uh,
need another reason. No. Poor
yeah,
Janeway.
yeah,
Get the ibuprofen hypo spray ready because she's going
yeah.
to need it,
She's,
plus
she's,
lots and
she's gonna
lots of
have a headache.
coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have only one other note, and it's just a goofy thing, and that is that Murph can say yeah now. He's been working on his linguistic skills just a little bit, it seems like. And apparently, according to Wesley, at least, he's got a bit of a filthy mouth.
Yeah, I keep thinking about that. Like, I mean, so far the only person who can understand him was the whale, was Gracie, and
You mean
who
Jillian?
knows? Oh, I'm so sorry, Jillian. So who knows? I mean, from being the polite whale, maybe she didn't say anything, but we don't really know what on earth he was blathering about.
Or is he just getting nasty with Wesley?
He could be. He could be. He seemed to have upset, to be upset when they met, and Wesley was like, "No, no, I remember our little chats that we've been having." So, yeah, it'd be great to know what they actually talked about, but we don't know what exactly he's saying.
How did that all
Behind the
go
scenes, we
down?
need behind or a short track about Murph. How about that? Great idea.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. I love the concept of the short treks that can give us just a little bite-sized piece of
Mhm.
things that just won't fit into a full-sized episode, but when done right, they can be so fulfilling.
Yeah.
All right, well, how about we get into the discussion? Because
Yeah.
we got some deep things going on in this episode. So, Marina, what did you find meaningful or memorable in this episode to kick us off?
Well, the whole thing, obviously, Wesley is the main feature. So everything, the story that he tells, the time travel concept that he explains, this is all very complicated. And long story short, Wesley is a time traveler who ran out of time, which is already, from the get-go, that sounds pretty scary.
Yes.
Travelers taught Wesley when he could and could not interfere. But as you already mentioned in the recap, they have hands-off approach to maintaining the balance. So on one hand, yeah, they're the ones who making sure everything is in balance. On the other hand, oh, this apparently turns out to be far too complicated, so they wash their hands off of an entire timeline. Wesley, even though he has been invited, he became a traveler. I think he, in essence, still remains a Starfleet officer. So I think that's why he's unwilling to just let it go. I mean, aside from the fact that this is his home, his mother's home. So prime directive, non-interference, that's, the stands supreme for Starfleet. So for him as well as the officer. And at the same time, I mean, that's consistently across all the Star Trek series, how many officers find themselves in situations where they have to make a difficult decision on how to bend it so they can, well, in this case, save an entire timeline.
This brings up so many questions I have.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned the prime directive and not interfering, but isn't Wesley directly interfering here?
Yeah, he is. And that's why I'm pretty sure he reached the point. It's like, no, I have to do something. I can't just let all these lives, all these worlds just go, entire universe,
Right.
just in
We
that one
get
timeline.
just that teeniest glimpse, like the end of the conversation that he
Mhm.
has with the traveler, Eric Mignot. And that's more or less where they left it. All right. I want to dive into a little something because this might be a little divisive among the fan base. Wesley having big Doctor Who energy, because now that we are learning a little bit more about the travelers, they are very much like the Time Lords, but Star Trek's version.
Yeah.
And as a fan of both Doctor Who and Star Trek, I don't dislike this. It just seems like they are kind of the two similar ideas on the same plane doing their own version of it, and that is
Yeah.
a-okay. The Traveler is not necessarily a new concept. We're just getting a lot more information about it. And so I've seen on social media a lot of people saying, oh, this is just like Doctor Who. They're copying Doctor Who. What do you think? Is it too similar or not?
Hmm. I don't think it's copying. As you said, this is not exactly a concept that's unique to either franchise. I mean, each one has its own twist, and I'm sure any Whovian would probably correct me. I was under the impression always that the Time Lords were far more technological, whereas in this case, we have the Traveler that's doing all this, any given Traveler, that is manipulating time and space with their mind. There's no TARDIS, there's no any kind of other gizmo or entity that would be
No
part of the
Sonics.
storyline. So is definite similarities? Oh yes. Is it too much? No, I don't think so. Because
Okay.
each one serves its own purpose, its own story. It's the two universes that don't necessarily cross-pollinate, although I know a lot of people were kind of hoping that at least in comics, maybe we will have, Doctor Who and Star Trek happening. And I don't know if that actually happened or not. I unfortunately have been out of the comic world for some time. But yeah, is it similar? Oh, absolutely. Come on. Will Wheaton. I would say
Honestly.
Will Wheaton is a Time Lord. I mean, he kind of,
Well, he has big David Tennant energy.
as far as I'm concerned, more of both, because both are doing their own thing.
Yeah, why not both? Why not both? And honestly, if there's any place where there can be a crossover, why not have it be in the comics?
Yeah. So I need to actually look up because I know we had a crossover with Green Lantern at
Hmm.
some point. And the gut feeling, I'm almost positive that I saw artwork that had both Daleks and Borg in it. Uh,
I'm
I'm
not
sure
sure if that's happened
I'm sure
or,
people would just message at me and be like, "You dreamt it."
yeah, you know what?
Um,
You can go to ML_Prodigy on X
and
and let us know. Yeah,
and
did this
let
happen?
Marina
Is it
know.
happening? Or is this just the thought that fans are trying to plant into showrunners' minds so that it does happen?
So another thing that is very Star Trek, and we have it again in multiple of the productions, and that's the fact that Star Trek as a whole supports the concept of multiverse,
Yeah.
multiple timelines, multiple things happen, multiple universes, and I love when it's not just simply mentioned as a thing, and nobody really goes too much into detail. I love when it brings fully developed weight, gravitas to the story, where it's part of that's what's driving the story, and it certainly does in this case.
This is pretty mind-boggling what they're doing here. It's so big because not only do we have storylines from this season of Prodigy, season 2 of Prodigy coming
Yeah,
together in this episode, but now we're putting the whole multiverse together in this whole thing, and it really is bigger than any one thing. It is the whole
yeah,
tapestry because they all belong together as a part of this greater concept.
yeah, and
I'm
the
doing the
magnitude
meme.
of it. Yeah, the magnitude of it is. I hope it comes across well, I mean, it did for me when Wesley is explaining this whole thing with the timelines and everything, and he says, "Yes, the grand tapestry." That, but the fact that it's very, very fragile. You pull on one string, pull on one thread, and the whole thing falls apart. So the immensity of the problem that we're dealing with right now, it's time and space, and the whole thing is just because a bunch of kids accidentally created a local time paradox, and now the universe is in two states. The travelers wash their hands off of it, and we go from something like, yeah, we just need to send our ship back to make sure that everything is in the right place, to the entire existence is affected of literally everybody.
Right.
It's yeah, it's a
That's a
bit
problem. Capital
yeah,
B.
yeah. I mean, they're already dealing with life and death things, and now it's on such an imaginable scale that kudos to the kids for kind of keeping their heads on.
No
It
kidding,
sounds
right?
really, really terrifying.
When you have the traveler saying, sorry, not touching that, except for one who is willing to step up and say, I'll take care of it. Boy, you've got a very, very big problem. And I suppose it goes to show the ethics of messing with time, they really are so fragile. But this also raised some questions in me too, just
Yeah.
because it is such an intricate, crazy thing how one little thing can absolutely unravel the whole flow, the whole fluidity of it all. Okay, Wes says that he has a vested interest in preserving our timeline, the prime timeline, since it's at his home and his mom lives here too. But what if, in the grand scheme of things, this timeline did need to die? Would he do it? And we see that explored a bit on Doctor Who, where certain horrible
Yeah.
things have to happen to keep history flowing as we know it. So, is he interfering here in a good way
Well,
or a
we
not
have it
good
on track as
way?
well.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have
absolutely.
same thing on, yeah, like, City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes,
Yeah, or the certain types when we know that, Bell riots have to happen or World War III has to happen. It's
right,
one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can't, you have to let certain events progress, otherwise things fall apart.
right. I
As
also
as
find
hopeful as
it,
it sounds. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, to understand the good, you also have to understand the other side of it
Mhm.
to appreciate the good. I also wonder, though, with the travelers being a more hands off in their approach, like, is there a reason for that besides it's simply just being very complicated, messing with time? Because in Star Trek, we have messed with time so many times. That's why Janeway gets headaches. And therefore, maybe we as an audience do as well. I'd love to know more about their thought process. Why do they have this
Yeah.
approach? Like, I would just like to know if there is more
Yeah.
to it or if it's really that straightforward. Also, when is it okay to
And and
intervene and when isn't it?
And the thing is that, like, there are other entities that we encounter in other tracks that kind of are in the same vein. I mean, they're not necessarily, although, Q are probably as powerful, if not more powerful than travelers.
Yeah,
They're probably
maybe.
messing with time when they need to or have to. But that also seemed to be very much like they don't do it just willy-nilly because otherwise you're gonna destroy the universe.
Right.
On this smaller scale, so to speak, if you remember Anorax in
Hmm.
Year of Hell, oh, he was messing with time bigly, and
Right.
in that,
And they're not.
And he was not concerned that, oh, that civilization never existed. Oh, had to get rid of this thing because I did have destroyed a comet. No, it was, highly egotistical approach to time. So in this case,
Yeah.
seeing how careful the travelers are, I'm sure that it's primarily is like it's so easy to screw up, best not to touch it and just make sure that everything is just so and so things don't unravel.
Yeah. I mean, Anorex proved just how fragile it all was because his calculations, as
Yeah.
good as they were, always missed a little bit of something and he was never happy. And
Mhm.
yet I can't ask, okay, Time Lords or travelers, how come you're not taking this guy out and saying, look, stop it. You
Yeah, but
can't do this. Why are they not interfering?
w-
Also, in the
we can't.
29th century, Captain Braxton, there's basically time cops who go around and fix timelines. Do they know about the travelers by the time the 29th century comes around? Like, I have so many questions about all of
Yeah, it's
this.
all, what is it? Well, we can't get away from Doctor Who. It's all timey-wimey stuff.
You know, it really is.
So what I love that with one thing that is brand new that we introduced, because to my knowledge, there's never been an entity in Star Trek that was in the same vein, and that of course is the Loom. Now, I
Hmm.
wouldn't call them antagonists, I wouldn't call them villains because they're doing their thing that they're set to do. It's in their nature to consume dying timelines. But we get a great new type of a monster. So, great concept, a cosmic scavenger. So this is the effect when they're slowing down time so they can feed. Oh, talk
Yeah.
about, yeah, like I said, it's
Creepy.
terrifying. So, the fact that something is obviously off because, Wesley says it several times, they're early and they keep finding them, which on one hand makes sense. Again, Gwyn and Wesley himself are aberrations. They're not supposed to be there because it's part of the time paradox. So they're like beacons in the
Right. They're
dark
giving
for
it
the Loom.
away.
Yeah. So, and well, again, it's not a creature that exists in Star Trek, but if we're saying that Wesley is a Time Lord, then the Loom are the Langoliers. And those who don't know, look it up. It's a wonderful miniseries you can watch or you can read it. It's one of the Stephen King stories where you have
Ah,
horrifying
okay.
monsters that eat the past. So it's
Okay, I was
yeah,
going to ask. I've
yeah,
not seen or read
yeah.
this. My thought actually went to Doctor Who here, thanks to my former co-host Norm. The Reapers in Father's Day were a lot like this. It was
Uh-huh.
during the Christopher
Yeah,
Eccleston season, and it was all about
yeah,
Rose and her father basically needing to die to
yeah.
restore time and make things go on as they needed to.
Yeah, but do check out the Langoliers because that was the whole concept where a group of people accidentally goes through a time rip and they end up in the past. And the
Hmm,
past is empty because everybody has proceeded into the present and the future. And so these horrible creatures arrive that consume the past because, that's what they do. So
interesting.
it's kind of, I thought like, okay, well, if Wesley's a Time Lord, then the Loom are the Langoliers. So why not?
Okay, so see,
At
it's
least
not just Doctor Who.
well, we do, as we talked about the Traveler, a lot of concepts kind of get their own twists, but not necessarily every
Right,
single thing is completely 100% original at this
right.
point. A
Good
lot of
ideas have
things,
multitudes of iterations.
exactly. That's exactly it. So the chat with Jellicoe, which we already referred to
Let's
several times.
talk.
Oh, it's Janeway at her finest. I mean, the fact that she quotes the three roles of command. I am tempted to actually ask Kate, did she just go for it and re-record it and inner Janeway just came out? Because I suspect she's always resides within her at all times. Or did she actually kind of like, well, how did I do it at the time? Did she rewatch it by chance, that episode, when she says that to Naomi? I'd love to know that. I love the fact that Jellicoe, well, being Jellicoe and whatever feelings you have to have, towards him as when he was Captain Jellicoe, he seems a bit different. He seems milder and a little bit more, I don't know, get maybe approachable is a better word. In this case,
Hmm,
even though he's being a very stereotypical, Trek trope of a
the
Starfleet admiral.
Admiral.
Yeah, well, not even he's not too bad,
He's
but
not a bad role.
he has this sort of like a very myopic, oh, we have bigger things to take care of. Like you stop whatever you're doing there. He also implies that Janeway is a bit of in a little bit of a trouble, I suppose, stemming back from
Hmm.
when her mind was taken over by Dal. So even though it's like it's known that that's what happened by now, nevertheless, it's like you're under strict orders. You're not doing anything without supervision, basically. And
Yeah.
yet, Jamie was just blowing him off. I was like, oh, Edward, I'm losing you. I'm going through transport tunnel. I love it. It has such a modern undertone. So we're like, oh, sorry, I'm going through Holland Tunnel. I can't hear what you're saying.
Right, we got things to do. Well,
Yeah.
I especially love the following up where we cut to her senior staff looking at her like, "Did you just lie to an admiral?" And she said,
Yeah,
"No, let's go through the
literally.
transport conduit."
Yeah. Well, she did. Yeah, because they were about to do it anyway. So
Yeah,
as you said,
exactly.
it's
It
not
wasn't a
really a
lie.
lie. But
Yes, and I just very recently watched the episode Dark Frontier, which was where Janeway's three rules of command
yeah,
came from, where she tells Naomi the whole thing. And I absolutely love how simple but profoundly meaningful it is. You tuck in your shirt, you always go down with the ship, and you never abandon a member of your crew. And so that is exactly the rules she's living by right here. And no one, especially Jellicoe, is going to be stopping her here.
yeah,
So the last thing that I've got for our discussion is the power of thought. I brought it up with our introduction, and it's so overlooked. Like the more I think about it, the more I think, okay, yeah, pretty much everything begins with thought. I mean, an idea doesn't exist until you think about it, right? So what do you have to do to make something happen? You have to think about it. You have to think about how you'll do it, why you're doing it. And all of those things lead to how our actions are dictated in the world and ultimately what we believe, which dictates how we act in the world around us. Like
yeah.
it's all kind of its own little paradox.
In a way, yeah. So
But yeah,
we've had a lot of food for thought in this episode, I would say.
we really
Um,
have. We've got
yeah,
time, we've got space, and we've got thought.
yeah. Um, so as I already mentioned, we end in a cliffhanger, which is
Yep.
a very uncomfortable, even though like nothing like super dramatic happens. Nevertheless, Voyager A arrives at that ziggurat planet. And we know that the monsters are there, the scavengers, the loom. And I mean, we've seen that Wesley was able to at least hide, lead the kids away. Janeway doesn't know where she's sending the team to. So that makes it a very yikes moment. So I'm assuming that's what we're gonna find ourselves at the beginning of the next episode.
Scary.
Um, to quote what Gwyn says at some point, she says, "I get a sense that there is so much more to this than we realize." And
Yeah.
how stupendously true this is. I mean, we went from big things happening season one, the kids helped save Starfleet and by extension Federation. Unwittingly joined a completely classified mission that had a lot of issues with it. And now they're standing on the precipice of enormous catastrophe that literally affects existence. Their own existence of everybody they know, existence of the entire
The
universe.
whole timeline's
Yeah.
existence.
Now we do get as far as like our actual storyline that we dying to learn about. Where's Chakotay? Where's Protostar? According to Wesley, we're halfway there. So
Yeah.
now that we have half the season to go, I presumably we will get there at some point. And then of
We
course one
must,
storyline that's kind of still hanging there, and it's been hanging there for quite a few episodes. We don't know what's going on Solum. What's going on with the
right?
Sensei? What's going on with Iltheron? Hopefully we'll get to catch up soon because I'm sure they're not just idling there. Something's going on
Oh
Solum as
no.
well.
You know they're not. We brought that up last week. There's always trouble as far as Essentia is concerned, but we do have some answers to the
Yeah.
lingering questions we've had this season. And I don't know about you. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all plays out just because so much is going on. The
Yeah.
threads are starting to converge.
Yeah.
And that said, I am prepping for a few headaches in our future because
Yeah.
I've got a feeling all this talk about timelines means there will be very timey-wimey shenanigans around
Oh yeah.
here.
And it's become quite literally very entangled. I mean, because there is a lot of information that has been shared, and obviously all of this has to somehow tie in into what we already know from the beginning of the season. So, yeah, mad rush, things are happening.
That seems like a good place to leave it off for this week. So thank you everybody for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or you can find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Production and technical direction is by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, and you should get good perks, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Next time we will take a look at The Devourer of All Things Part 2. And remember, we will feature cadet voicemails on both parts of the story at the end of the next week's show.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.